Hi, I'm Hannah, and I normally do talks all about facts, figures, and data, all to do with accessibility, usability, and tutorials in video games. This is my first talk about my opinions and personal experiences with something, so please bear with me. I also feel like I need to add a little bit of a disclaimer, so that when I use the term developers, I mean anybody and everybody involved in the creation of games, so like QA, designers, programmers, artists, product managers, everybody, because if I kept listing them each time, we'd be here until next year. So, let's get to it. The release of Assassin's Creed Unity was a joke. For those of you who've spoken to me for more than 30 seconds will know that I am the biggest defender of Assassin's Creed. But Unity was an embarrassment. However, our reactions to it as developers were no less embarrassing. Sure, Ubisoft could have been more sympathetic towards the whole no playable female characters scandal, but then in turn, we could have been far more forgiving in light of the bugs and issues upon release. I'm in no way defending the issues and bugs at all. As a QA engineer, I don't think my job description would even allow me to do that. Day one patches are an evil upon the industry. Even today, I've seen about 20 tweets from various people who have preloaded Batman Arkham Knight complaining about the 3 gig patch. It's just become the norm. I'm not entirely sure how or when this happened. It just did, and it's now the standard that we live in. And we're the biggest critics. Non-developer consumers of video games may just grumble once or twice about them, but just about every time there's a major AAA release with a day one patch, we all, and yes, even I've done this once or twice, have taken to Twitter and the rest of the internet to complain about this slight inconvenience getting between us and the game. Now, a common occurrence in this situation, or when games release with bugs, no matter the severity of the bugs, is the phrase, did this game even go through QA? Well, I'll let you in on a secret. Of course it went through QA. If it didn't, the game wouldn't run. The game wouldn't exist in a playable form. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir, maybe not, but the attitudes towards QA are disgusting. And from time to time, from time to time, developers have even made me feel ashamed to only be in QA. These last 2 screenshots, that's taken from a Kotaku article last October, I believe, and that is from the comment section on a Eurogamer article. So there's the quote there from a journalist, and then just your average player. I like to play games for the narrative, for gameplay, and for context, here's a short explanation of how and why I got into games. Sorry, Jordan, to also use Spyro. But I don't remember the first time I actually played Spyro. I do remember the years it has stayed with me. Just simply by the release date of Spyro, I couldn't have been more than 8 years old. And for years, the lovely, charming, young purple dragon has stayed close in my heart, and he still does to this day. Despite being from Wales, I've never actually been surprised by my feeling of kinship towards this dragon. What has surprised me, though, in recent years is how much this game shaped my future without me realising. Just for a little bit even more context, 8-year-old me, who was probably this height, wanted to be a forensic scientist. I'm not entirely sure what kind of 8-year-old decides she wants to be a forensic scientist, but that should give some insight into my childhood. But over the past 16 years, the career path of choice, I've flirted with being a translator, a linguist, a psychologist, and I've somehow ended up in games specialising in QA and usability. For those of you who might not be aware, Spyro the Dragon provides a bright, vibrant universe in which you can run, glide, headbutt, and breathe fire, like a dragon. Much like many 3D platformers from the 90s, Spyro the Dragon contains many hub worlds, each filled with the brim with different levels, bursting into the scenes with a wide range of themes and environments. My favourite of which resides in the first hub world, and the level in question, which is actually this picture as well, is Stone Hill. the home to farming dragons, bouncing lambs and rams roaming throughout the level. So kind of like Wales. And in a way, this level symbolises where I come from. One side of my family hails from the Bounding Hills of South Wales, the South Wales Valleys, and the other from all over the country, mostly small coastal towns. And Stonehill includes both of these landscapes. Not sure if this picture kind of demonstrates easily, but Stonehill contains gems hidden among trees along this upper track at the level where you have to chase the egg thief to get the dragon egg. And I hate that thing. And this is also where I encountered the first concept of digital affinity. Because you have to use the newly learned gliding mechanic to get to this upper track. So it actually serves as a very good tutorial. And because this is me, I have to mention tutorials. Yes, the Stonehill level provided my first experience of limitation on a digital imagination. And many hours were spent walking into, headbutting, and flaming the invisible force field that acts as the world boundary around this upper track. The dead-looking trees, I guess is how you'd explain. You can't go past them. And 8-year-old me wanted to break through. Like, I needed to break through. I had to see what was on the other side. Unfortunately, the QA testers on this game did their job excellently, and you can't break through, no matter how much I try. And it's probably this need that has inadvertently led me into a career in QA. And the trope of, oh, you must spend your days running into walls over and over to see if you can break through, is one that always comes up whenever I reveal I'm a QA tester. And whilst that couldn't actually be further from the truth of my day-to-day work, there indeed have been games which I worked on in which I had to do exactly that, Beyond Two Souls being the prime example. But this little egg thief and the purple dragon are the sole reasons I got into games, and the sole reason that I gave up on games for 10 years. After studying psychology at university, I realised that I wanted to go back into games, to create them. So I had to play them. I can't think of a time where I've thought, hey, I'm just going to drop 50, 60 quid on a game just to judge people's programming skills. But I do find myself noticing the slightest of issues. I'm not sure if the picture shows very well, but this is Far Cry 3 with floating rocks. I wonder if I'd have noticed it if I wasn't a QA tester, but I then spent half an hour walking around this mountainside to spot all of the floating rocks and take pictures. Just to put into perspective, if I saw this issue in my job, I'd spend less than a minute inputting the issue into Jira. But clearly, 5 years of being in the games industry and being involved in the creation of games has clearly wormed its way into my head. We're clearly not objective about our consumption of video games, and a large percentage of job adverts for games even specify a passion for games. I'm not sure if this image is clear, but the third point down, this is a job advert screenshot that I took last night from Amcus Games for a free-to-play designer in Dundee. Note how they're not actually even asking for design experience, they're just asking for an undeniable passion in video games in all their forms. Of the 4 games companies I've previously worked at, like major studios now, not like the little indies I worked for, I've not met a single employee that wouldn't call themselves a gamer, in inverted commas, because I hate that term, including non-development staff. I have often wondered if this means that a HR department will pass over on, say, a programmer who doesn't enjoy games but loves the technology behind them and hire a self-identified gamer instead. I'd be interested to find out if the film industry is as vicious as we can be, and I wonder if writers spend their time questioning another writer's use of grammar or lexicon. Take these Stephen King quotes, for example. If you want to be a writer, you must do 2 things above all others. Read a lot and write a lot. And it's right in front of me, I can't read it. There's no way around these 2 things that I'm aware of, no shortcut. This can very easily translate directly into games development. In order to be a great game developer, you have to play games, immerse yourself in games, and obviously develop them. As King says, there are no shortcuts. Sure, if you're a lighting artist, you're going to want to play the games to see how they handle lighting in various scenarios, and to see if you can do better. If you're and if you're a QA tester, you're going to subconsciously spot bugs. My Instagram post, previously slide, kind of proves that. We can't make better, greater games if we don't know what the competition is doing. The second quote, which I think is a little bit contradictory, I can't say long words. I'm a slow reader and I usually get through 70 or 80 books a year, most fiction. I don't read in order to study the craft. I read because I like to read. Again, this can be translated directly to games. We all got into this industry out of passion. No one in their right mind is under the impression we're in it for the money, that's for sure. But in order to continue to make great games, we have to still enjoy playing games. No matter the reasons we play games, we can't constantly have our developer brains switched on when playing. That's just like too much hard work. The hard work should be spent making the games. The last thing any of us want is for our hobby to become like a chore. And that was very short. Sorry, but yeah.